The Eagle's Soldier. Chapter 1. The Blacksmith's Son. The summer of 1805 was unusually warm in the countryside around Lyon. The wheat fields shimmered beneath the afternoon sun, and the sound of hammers striking iron echoed from the village forge. 17-year-old Jean-Baptiste Moreau wiped the sweat from his brow and swung his hammer once more. Sparks flew across the workshop floor as glowing metal bent beneath the force of the blow. His father watched silently. For months now, every traveler who passed through the village carried the same stories. France was at war again. Napoleon Bonaparte, now Emperor of the French, was gathering an army unlike anything Europe had ever seen. Every week brought news of victories. Every week brought new recruits. Every week brought dreams. Jean-Baptiste had listened carefully to every tale. He imagined himself marching beneath great banners. He imagined cheering crowds. He imagined medals pinned to his chest and stories told about his bravery. He never imagined the blood. The village church bell rang in the distance. His father laid down his tools. "You've made your decision, haven't you?" Jean-Baptiste nodded. "I leave tomorrow." For a moment, the old blacksmith said nothing. His hands were scarred from decades at the forge. His hair had turned gray long ago. His back bent slightly from years of hard labor. "You think war is glory?" Jean-Baptiste smiled. "Everyone says the emperor cannot lose." His father sighed heavily. "Everyone says many things." The young man looked away. He had already made up his mind. Nothing would stop him. Not fear, not common sense, not the tears he knew his mother would shed. The next morning, before sunrise, he left home carrying a small pack and his father's old knife. As he walked away from the village, he turned one last time. His mother stood outside the cottage waving. His father stood beside the forge. Neither knew it would be years before they saw him again. Chapter 2. The Grande Armée. Nothing in Jean-Baptiste's life had prepared him for the sight of the Grande Armée. The camp stretched beyond the horizon. Thousands upon thousands of soldiers filled the fields around Strasbourg. Blue uniforms, white crossbelts, rows of tents, lines of artillery, endless columns of cavalry horses. The air was thick with wood smoke and cooking fires. Drums beat constantly. Officers barked orders. Trumpets sounded across the camp. To Jean-Baptiste, it seemed less like an army and more like a living city. A city preparing for war. His first weeks were miserable. The veterans laughed openly at the new recruits. The marching nearly broke him. His boots rubbed his feet raw. His shoulders blistered beneath the weight of his pack. His uniform never seemed dry. Rain soaked them during the day. Cold winds chilled them at night. One evening, he collapsed beside a campfire. Across from him sat Sergeant Marcel Girard. The veteran had fought in Italy and Egypt under Napoleon himself. His face carried scars, earned in battles Jean-Baptiste had only read about. The old soldier handed him a piece of bread. "Thinking of home?" Jean-Baptiste nodded. Marcel laughed. "Good. What is? If you stop thinking of home, you'll never survive." The younger man frowned. "What do you mean?" The veteran stared into the flames. "War isn't about courage, boy. It's about having a reason to keep walking when everything hurts." Those words would stay with Jean-Baptiste for the rest of his life. Chapter 3. The Son of Austerlitz. By December, the army had marched hundreds of miles. Austria had already suffered defeat. Now the Russians stood alongside their allies, waiting for battle. The men knew something important was coming. Even the veterans could feel it. On the night before the battle, Napoleon rode along the French lines. Thousands of soldiers cheered. Torches illuminated the darkness. The emperor removed his hat and acknowledged the men. Jean-Baptiste caught only a brief glimpse of him. Yet somehow, that was enough. The entire army seemed transformed. The exhaustion vanished. The hunger disappeared. For a few moments, every man believed victory was certain. The next morning, thick fog covered the battlefield. Jean-Baptiste stood silently in formation. His mouth was dry. His hands trembled. The fear was overwhelming. Around him, hundreds of soldiers waited. No one spoke. Then slowly, the mist began to part. Golden sunlight broke through the clouds. The battlefield illuminated before them. A murmur spread through the ranks. The son of Austerlitz. The words passed from soldier to soldier. Even years later, veterans would speak of that moment. The sunlight felt like a blessing. As the drums began beating, the French army advanced. At first, all Jean-Baptiste heard was the crunch of boots on frozen ground. Then came the artillery. The first cannon fired with a thunderous roar. A moment later, dozens answered. The earth shook. Smoke rolled across the battlefield. The battle had begun. Jean-Baptiste's heart hammered against his chest. The enemy appeared through the smoke. Russian infantry, thousands of them. Their bayonets glittered beneath the winter sun. An officer drew his sword. Forward! The French line surged ahead. Musket fire erupted. Men began falling. The air filled with screams. A soldier beside Jean-Baptiste spun and collapsed. Another dropped moments later. Still, they advanced. The distance closed. 100 yards, 50 yards, 20. Then came the order. Charge! The world exploded into chaos. Bayonets clashed. Men grappled in the smoke. Officers shouted themselves hoarse. Jean-Baptiste barely remembered the details afterward. Only fragments remained. A Russian soldier lunging toward him. The sound of steel, blood on the snow. The overwhelming instinct to survive. Hours later, the battle was over. The Allied army was shattered. France had achieved one of the greatest victories in military history. The soldiers celebrated around campfires that night. Songs echoed through the darkness. Wine flowed freely. Everyone spoke of glory. Yet Jean-Baptiste sat quietly staring into the flames. His closest friend, Pierre, had died that morning. Only yesterday they had spoken of returning home together. Now Pierre lay among thousands of dead, scattered across the battlefield. For the first time, Jean-Baptiste understood a terrible truth. Victory belonged to the living. The dead paid for it.